Bills this offseason, adding a new threat to a Houston offense that finished in the top 10 in passing yards. Here's what Offensive Rookie of the Year C.J. Stroud and Diggs had to say today. He had a feeling he might be on the move. It's new on SportsCenter.
I'm sorry, I gotta pause real fast because do you guys hear this like epic guitar? Like, I mean, like, what is this like rock that they're like going into? As we're just gonna talk about Stefon Diggs' leadership role with the Houston Texans. Like, what? Like, why is ESPN so weird with their music these days? It's either like these like random like smooth beats, hardcore hip hop, or like this like epic guitar solo. Like, just show us sports. That's all we want.
For me, I kind of, you kind of feel it in the air a little bit, especially, I'm saying, personal feelings. But for me, when I got traded, obviously, I was happy. I was in a good place. Like I said, I told God to light my path, and here I am. So he makes no mistakes. I'm saying I'm standing firm in that. I'm standing strong. So when I say I've been smiling, I've been smiling.
And he's come in and been a leader, which I'm proud of him for, and just really has been unselfish and wanted to see other guys eat, and that was his main thing. Is like he wanted to be around other dogs, and he stepped into that role where there's a dog everywhere. He looks right, he looks left. There's going to be a dog. So, and he wanted that, and that's what we bring to the table. And he's been nothing but just amazing so far, and I'm very excited to work with him.
C.J. Stroud looks to replicate his incredible rookie season where he ranks top 10 among quarterbacks in QBR, pass yards, and yards per attempt when targeting a wide receiver. Stroud now has Stefon Diggs in his receiver corps, who is just one of two players to record at least 1,000 receiving yards in each of the last 6 seasons. Tim Hasselbeck here with us. And Tim, you have receivers like Tank Dell and Nico Collins on that Texans roster. With that in mind, if you're C.J. Stroud, what are you looking for from Stefon Diggs?
Look, I think the first thing you're looking for is just to kind of build the rapport with him. He does such a good job of winning at the line of scrimmage, winning one-on-ones. And so he's going to end up being the #1 receiver for the Texans. Now, I think beyond that, what you're looking for is somebody that's going to be okay when there are weeks where he doesn't get the ball more than every other receiver on the roster. Like, I think that's really what you're looking for. They're trying to build around C.J. Stroud, who's on a rookie contract in Houston because of the great year he had last year. They've got good, talented young receivers. You just don't want to be spoiled with a frustrated receiver. I think that really ends up being the key, which is why I think C.J. Stroud initially started talking about his leadership and how he's been as a leader since joining Houston. And so that's probably more important than what he will bring to the table on the field. Yeah, you want to build around CJ.
Okay, so that's interesting. Unless I misheard him, he said that he thinks that Diggs is going to be the #1 receiver, which it seems like a lot of Texans and Texans fans especially don't believe that to be the case. They actually see Diggs as more as a second or third receiver. Whether that's accurate or not, it's just interesting. That kind of just threw me off. I feel like I had to have misheard him. What did he exactly say?
Look, I think the first thing you're looking for is just to kind of build the image, winning one-on-ones, and so he's going to end up being the #1 receiver.
Yeah, that is what he said. That's like honestly, it seems to me, based off all these videos that I make, and definitely have a lot of Texans fans here, like they all seem to not see Diggs as the #1 receiver. So that's just fascinating to me. So I am now pretty curious to see how that unfolds. But I wanted to speak more on the idea of Diggs, because he also said that Stefon Diggs' leadership is more important than his on-field impact. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because they are set with leadership. They have, as C.J. Stroud said, they have their dogs. They have their leaders. They are unified behind C.J. Stroud, behind D'Amico. Like, they have that unification. They have the trust in their OC. A lot of times when you say that their leadership role is more important, that's with a team that maybe has had no success at all. The Texans have had success. That's more maybe important when a team has no maturity. Texans seem to just be pure maturity. They seem to be wise beyond their years. So maybe it's more important when you don't have a bona fide head coach that everyone trusts. D'Amico has become that already. In one quick season, boom, he said, yep, I'm here, I'm legit. We don't have to question my leadership. So I disagree with that, right? If this was last year and they brought Diggs over, and this was CJ Stroud, new guy, D'Amico, new guy, right? This was all new, young team. Then you could say that. Then you could say, okay, we need the experience of Diggs. But that's not the case. They've had a ton of success already. I know it was a short window, a short time frame, but still. And it's not like Diggs. It's one thing if Diggs maybe has gone to multiple Super Bowls, right? Won a couple rings, just one ring. Then I could see that a little bit more, because then they could say he can, help this Texans team grow and teach them what it takes to win and how to get past the next round, how to beat a team like the Ravens. Then I could understand that, but that's not Diggs' background. So I disagree with that. I can see him leading. The thing that I think is most important for him in terms of leadership is like a Kevin Durant style leadership. A lot of people don't think that KD is a good leader, and I disagree with that, because people always associate leadership with, like, if you're like talking to people, barking at people, pointing, right? Like I always, it makes me think of like a political commercial where they're like walking down, like talking to someone and smiling and like pointing and like like looking at things and looking off to the distance. Like, people think that that's what leadership is when they watch it on TV. Like, oh, so and so is a good leader because he's like talking to another player and is like pointing and is like trying to rally everyone up. Like, that's a good leader. And anyone who doesn't do that is not a good leader. And sometimes the best way to lead is by example. And what Kevin Durant does, what I think is one of the best, is no matter what's going on in a game, no matter what's going on in a season, he puts in the work. He always tries his best, no matter what. He puts in the work, he shows the resilience, and he does what needs to be done. And to me, that is what Diggs needs to do. No matter what's happening in the season, whether he's getting no targets at all, or whether he's getting 1,000 targets a game, he needs to show up with the same enthusiasm, that same smile. He kept saying, I'm smiling all the time. That same smiling. If they drop 2 games in a row, like, he has to bring that same energy. That, to me, is an important way of how he can lead. But that's on-field impact as well. Maybe it's not so much as is he catching touchdowns and having 100-yard games, but is it what energy does he bring to that table, right? Does CJ Stroud feel the anxiety or the stress to try to get him the ball, whatever it may be? Does the OC feel pressure? And again, I hope not, because that usually does not lead to success. You saw that with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and it doesn't work that way. All these things have to be organic and natural. You have to let the game come to you and not say, well, I got to get this guy going because, we got to get his numbers up, right? His ego, let's do it. Like, that's not the way it works. If the ball comes to Diggs and that's what the game is giving the Texans, well, then obviously by all means get to it. And maybe if they're losing and Diggs isn't getting touches, then you could make that argument of like, let's try to get Diggs going. That should maybe open up the field, whatever it may be. But again, this whole idea, though, that it's like it's weird to me, because on one side Tim Hasselbeck is saying he's going to be the number 1 receiver, but what's more important is his leadership and his on-field impact. No, if you're going to be the number 1 receiver, then you need to ball out. Then you need to be that guy on the field, because they don't need leadership. Like, they're not lacking in leadership. They didn't lose against the Ravens because they lacked leadership. So it's just this whole segment was just kind of a little messy to me personally. To me, it's just very clear what they need from Diggs. They need a good soldier. They need a guy who's going to be okay with maybe having like a 10 reception game and then having the next game have 1 reception, 1 target, right? And have him still be giving high fives when Nico or someone else, Tank, like, they get a touchdown. He's right there giving them a high five, doing a dance with them, and giving them a smack on the butt and doing it. Like, that is what you need. To me, I always look at that when I'm watching the number 1 receiver or whatever, or just not even the number 1 receiver, just the other players, and you see them. Are they dancing with the other guys when they score a touchdown? Are they chirping and giving high fives and doing that even though they did not catch it? And that matters. That really matters. And that's what I'm going to be watching for Diggs more than anything, because that's when you know a team is firing at all cylinders, when everyone is just as excited when someone else scores, when someone else gets the job done, and it's not just me. So like I kept saying in all my Texans videos, I think the Texans are going to be a great team this season. I think they're going to ball out. I'm really not concerned at all. I think they'll have some issues, like every team does, right? Like every team has issues throughout a season. It's not going to be like they're just going to have no issues whatsoever. This offense is just going to be unstoppable and no one can stop them, and boom, they're just going to win. What is it, 20 games that they would have to win or whatever? And it's just like, I don't think it's going to be that easy. They're going to have their issues, and there will be an issue, a game probably where Diggs doesn't have a great game, and everyone's going to try to like build it up into this thing of like, oh, is Diggs, what is Diggs going to say? Is he going to be upset, right? Like, then that's what the media always does. They want to try to fan the flames of hostility. But I think for the most part, the Texans are very well insulated. I think they're well coached. They're well led. And so, yeah, I just don't think that they got Diggs because they need another leader, that his leadership is going to be more important. I just don't see it that way. I think ultimately what they want Diggs is there for is to make the job easier for everyone offensively. They don't need another locker room guy. They want the offense to have more weapons, to want to have it run even more smoothly, to take some of the pressure off of CJ Stroud, to make his job easier, to take some of the pressure off of some of the other weapons, to help develop a run game, the O-line. Like, it's just, to me, again, it just always comes down to complementary football. So that's what it comes down to me. When the Eagles, I've always compared this to the Eagles, when the Eagles went out and got A.J. Brown, the Eagles were in desperate need for another weapon. They didn't have, they had already a really great wide receiver, in Devontae, but they needed another weapon, and they also needed another bigger, stronger wide receiver, and that's why they went out and got A.J. Brown and paid all the money for him, and that's what the Eagles genuinely needed. That's what they lacked. The Texans didn't genuinely lack a receiver. They didn't lack another weapon. This was an addition that only makes them greater, not filling in a missing gap that now just makes them more resilient. There's a difference. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys think about Stephon Diggs' role specifically with the Houston Texans? Is what's more important, that he's a leader, or do you think that he's actually going to be the number one receiver? How do you think this is all going to unfold? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel, connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.